It's time to get sexy. So watch Secular Sexuality live Thursdays at 7 p.m. Central. Visit tiny.cc/YTSS and call into the show at 512-991-9242 or connect to the show online at tiny.cc/callsex.
Welcome, everybody. Watch where you're swinging those fists, Johnny. You're going to hit me, man. We're in the same room together for real.
Sorry, man. Sorry. You're right.
Welcome, everybody. It is January 30th, 2022. I had to look down at the clock, actually, just the thing, just to make sure I didn't say 2021. Welcome to Talk Heathen. We are a product of the atheist community of Austin, a 501c3 organization dedicated to the promotion of positive atheism and separation of church and state. And I am here with Johnny. It's been a while. I can't actually remember the last time we did an episode.
It's been a spell, hasn't it? And it's all the sweeter now that we are here today together.
Me, you, friends. And your spoon drink that I'm convinced that it looks like he drinks out of a spoon, like the end of a spoon. I'm not convinced it's a straw.
It's a straw made of steel.
Anyways, for those that are not aware, there's many ways to support us. Below the video, there's actually a place to become a member. You can join there and get some perks, such as being able to not have the pesky slow mode. You can talk whenever you want. Below that as well, the live chat, you actually have a donation that goes directly to the ACA and does not go through YouTube. And so that's another way that you can directly support us. Johnny, I was going to go into some things, but it looks like we have a caller that I was like, kind of the topic was already going to be spoken about. So maybe we just go on to the topic.
The things can wait.
Yeah, well, it'll be relevant, I think. So we're gonna go to the one and only Rao, R-A-O, and he wants to he, she, or they. I don't have pronouns. So I'm sorry I don't have your preferred pronouns, but they want to talk about simulation theory. How's it going?
All right. Jmike, I actually talked to you in the Truth Wanted chat, was it?
Yeah, I believe so.
Yeah, and I feel like I've gotten a little bit better. I've gotten a little bit more concise at like explaining myself. I've been practicing a lot, and as far as I could tell from you, that you have like kind of a loose hard solipsism in the sense that you know that you exist, but you can't prove with an amount of certainty that anything outside of your mind exists. Correct?
Yeah, in a sense. So the best way to put it is I would state that I'm a skeptic, first and foremost. But if I was to put it in kind of the philosophical language, so to speak, I think I'd be what's called an epistemic solipsist, which people think that makes me believe that there aren't real people. But the idea is that from an epistemic base of knowledge, I can know I exist. I could start with kind of the knowledge of that and build off my epistemology. And then the idea really is just that since I don't have access to other minds, I just lend the possibility of any type of solipsistic scenario, Descartes' demon, brain of that, all those types of things. I don't think I could logically or deductively disprove them. So I accept that as kind of the skeptical fabric of my epistemology.
And Johnny, I don't think I've talked to you since you were call screened, so
It's been a while.
Yeah, and I mean, I've missed the show. Honestly, I've been out of it for a little bit for other reasons, but I actually wanted to. We're going to keep rambling on unless I get to a point here. But my first piece of evidence for the simulation hypothesis would definitely be the people who are smarter than me, who have been doing this their entire lives. And I think he worked as like the head science dude under the Obama administration, Dr. James Sylvester Gates. A quote from him was that when he was tearing down the mathematical, the math that describes the fabric of the universe, what he found was strings of 1 and 0s that are not similar to, but identical to, the error correcting code that we find in our search engines today.
Okay, so there's two things there. First thing I want to, you would agree that a person being smart or having the ability to like possess knowledge that maybe lay people don't have doesn't mean that that's good evidence to the claim, right? Like we would agree that like an ad populum fallacy wouldn't be good reasoning, right? Or like a authority.
Well, it's not necessarily an ad populum fallacy, because an ad
Well,
populum fallacy is...
I'm sorry. No, I'm sorry. I misspoke. What I'm going to say is an argument from authority. It doesn't seem like that's going to...
Right. An argument from authority is only if the person is not an authority on that topic. And it would be like a botanist trying to say that their degree in botany qualifies them to talk about economics at a doctorate level.
Yeah, so there's going to be a little confusion here, because yeah, there is a form of an authority fallacy where it's from a false authority, right? But it still would be fallacious to say this person's a biologist, therefore what they said is true, right? That would still be fallacious reasoning, right?
Well, I'm not just saying that what they said. I'm saying that the research that they have done, when Dr. Gates broke it down and actually did the research, not just because he said it, but because he actually studied it, did the work, did the research, and then brought it up. And I'm not sure at what stage in peer review it's in right now, or if it even has hit peer review, or if this was just something that he was toying with. But I would say that his expertise in the field would give him more credit. It would be better.
Well, so like it sounded like you kind of went where I would hope you would, in the sense of that you care about the independent attestation, or at least what the work is trying to do, rather than what the person said. So like I won't, I'm not going to hammer you on the first part. I just wanted to make sure that you care about the independent data before I kind of just go on to assuming that's evidence for you.
I care about what's being said more than who said it. But if the person who said it is actually studied in the field for years, decades, and they've reached that clout of being the head science dude under Obama, I would say that they are qualified enough for the job that they're smarter on the topic than I am.
So that's fine. So I didn't want to bog down that point a lot. I just wanted to make sure that you weren't going to appeal to authority. But the second main point, it seems like, and I don't know this work, so it's going to be hard for me to speak upon the specific work, obviously. But the problem I have with any of these types of simulation theories is it seems to be problematic that if I can just give you conjecture of like Descartes' demon or like some solipsistic scenario, and that underdetermines your theory, it's just as likely given all the data, then I don't know why we would put any like epistemic stock into it to think that that's a way to gain knowledge of actually how the world works. Because it seems that I can underdetermine your theory by just saying like, what if we're in a dream, right? I don't know how we falsify this theory, and I don't know what like expectations the predictions that it's supposed to be generating.
Well, that actually, when you're talking about philosophy of Descartes' demon, the allegory of the cave, let's see, who else was it? Zhang Zhu's butterfly dream. Am I a butterfly having a dream that I'm Zhang Zhu, or am I actually Zhang Zhu who just had a dream that they were a butterfly? Yeah, when we get into philosophical concepts, I don't think that holds as much ground as the actual mathematics. I think when the mathematics are there, we have more ground than just logically this could be possible.
Yeah, I'm not and I want to pass it to Johnny here because I want to take all the time here, but I'm not gonna say there's like some contradiction. It's fine that there could be some scenario at which you could develop some inference rule, right, and like have it logically follow. But my problem is if I take the same set of data and I come to a different conclusion, what is it that your theory does that generates a predictive expectation that say mine wouldn't, right? Because it seems to be underdetermined. And by that, I mean, it seems that we could rival this theory with any theory, and we're no better off because the one that's going to separate it from the pack is the one that has some predictive expectation. But I'm not sure if I'm hearing what that is.
Well, like that, like I said, this isn't my only evidence. This is just one piece of evidence that the mathematics fits. And in court, what we have is we have the.
Yeah, but I'm sorry, but you said the mathematics fits. But how do we know the mathematics fits?
Yeah, can you walk us through the mathematics? Because
I can't. That's why I am relying on the smarter people, and I don't know exactly what the mathematics are,
Yeah.
so I wouldn't be able to lead you through that. But it's.
So then, why are you convinced?
Are you convinced, or are you just raising an interesting idea? And is it RAO or is it Rao?
It's RAO.
Okay, that's what I always thought it was. I've seen you on the social media, and I've never actually said the name out loud. RAO, thank you for calling, and thank you for clarifying that. So sorry, what was the answer again to my question?
Well, it's not that like, okay, this is like with a criminal court, you have beyond a shadow of a doubt.
It's beyond a reasonable doubt.
And then beyond a reasonable doubt. And then, sorry about that. Thanks for the correction. With a civil court, you have a preponderance for evidence. So
and sometimes it's by clear and convincing evidence. It depends on what the actual case is about. Clear and convincing evidence is more than by preponderance, but less than beyond a reasonable doubt. It depends.
And right now, I'm trying to meet the qualification of a civil suit before I even try to get to the qualification of a criminal trial. So I'm taking the evidence that I have, and I'm seeing if the collection of evidence leads more to one conclusion than another.
Well, here's something. You wanted to bring in a court analogy, and I do appreciate that. So you've cited to an expert, and this would be Dr. Gates, who has brought up this idea. Not alone. There are others who've talked about it, and many who have dismissed it as speculative. But the thing about experts in court is what they do is they will get up on the stand, and they will usually have produced a report, and that report looks at specialized knowledge and will address certain points, certain complex issues that may be beyond the ken or understanding of a jury or the judge if it's a bench trial, and explain it in a way that will aid the decider of fact in coming to make certain factual determinations. Okay, so what we have here is an expert, arguably a very intelligent person who was top science guy under Obama, which I don't exactly know what that means, but like an intelligent person who was well respected.
I can't remember his exact title, but that
would matter.
It was that's yeah.
That would matter, right? Who has done some heavy thinking and probably some heavy research into the math and physics and all this jazz, and now has brought up a hypothesis that the universe is a simulation and can cite to some numbers that I don't know about you, Ariel, it's far beyond my rinky-dink, I hate math understanding. So until such time as Dr. Gates or someone else can explain the math in a way to me that convinces me by preponderance of the evidence or clear and convincing or beyond a reasonable doubt, I'm just going to say there's not enough information here for me to say that this is the way the universe is cooked up. And until you understand the math or have it explained to you in a way that you understand the math, not just a smart person has said this, then maybe all you can say in good faith is, well, that's interesting. I'd like to hear more. That's where I'm at.
But even if I'm right, I need to get better at being right.
Well, we all do, don't we? I mean, you're not alone in that. Yeah.
I'm
not disagreeing with you. I'm not disagreeing with you at all. I'm just clearing that up. But where Jmike was going with that little piece, even if it's true, like it could still fit in here and not here with the Descartes demon and things like that. That's what
no, hold on real fast. I'm not trying to say it. My idea is that, like, if we're going to take it seriously, yours has to have some type of novel prediction, some kind of new prediction in the future that separates it. Otherwise, the theory is just underdetermined by like conjecture ad infinitum. I could just keep making up as much as I want with the data, but if you don't have a predictive expectation that's something new in the future, then it's on par with the drunk guy at the bar or whoever just tells you something like, hey, you know what? Descartes' demon, that's some real shit, man. There's nothing different between those two theories at the way it stands. And the bigger issue I have is if you don't understand the math on it, which is not a sin by any, like, there's no issue in not understanding the math. But if you don't understand it, I'm worried why the story or the connection to wanting to know takes precedent over the potential facts in, say, cosmology or anywhere else that just don't concern themselves with these theories, right? Where the models it doesn't even require that conjecture. And in fact, it would just probably be antithetical to the actual theory, right? So I'm confused why if you admit that you don't understand the math, why you would take that as precedent over the potential facts.
I haven't seen anything antithetical to the simulation hypothesis. Like, it's honestly,
I have one right now. It's not a simulation. There's an antithetical view. Now, which one generates? If yours says yours is true, which I'm a skeptic, I'm fine with either one potentially being true. I'm not dying on any hill. But if you really have stock in this, then presumably you could give me the expectation that the predictive expectation. And then we could just get rid of the antithetical view where I'm saying, nope, no simulation, right? That would separate it. That would be the work that we need to do.
So a predictive expectation is that someday computer characters not played by humans, not PCs, main characters, that kind of thing, but NPCs would be able to create games of their own volition.
So but okay, how is that inconsistent with the non-simulated world that has AI that could do the same? Right? Because the AI, the artificial intelligence of the game would just be that. And I'm a programming major. I'm not a good one by any means, but that's not something that would be like, that would throw, my potential profession in a whirl. Like, I'd be like, yeah, AI seems to be consistent with this non-simulated world I live in. So I don't know how that prediction wouldn't also be underdetermined by my theory.
I would think that if simulations would be able to create simulations within themselves that weren't being fed to them by human interaction, and that's why I specified NPCs. If an NPC is able to create a game or a simulation of its own volition, then what we have seen is that our technology will advance to a point that simulations will create simulations, and that at least reduces the chances.
Yeah, but what would would be the contradiction in the non-simulated world? I don't know why that couldn't follow. I don't know why that counts as evidence for yours when I could use the same data point as evidence for the non-simulated world. I could use the same evidence. It's the whole idea here is that it's underdetermined. We can appeal to the same evidence because the evidence that we're appealing to doesn't actually separate one of our theories from each other, because you're not actually diverging from some The idea here is that your theory is not falsifiable, right? I can just rival it with any other theory. I don't know how is it verified? What's the falsification criterion? What would we expect if it wasn't true, right? It doesn't seem like, I'd have to look at this guy's paper, obviously, but it just sounds very it sounds pseudoscientific to me.
And like that's what I was saying is I'm trying to figure out how to falsify. I can figure out several ways to verify it, or to make it look more likely. I can't figure out any ways to make it look less likely. I haven't seen anything close to the evidence, such as the Planck constants, and you're right. I am going to have to get to a point where I understand the math a lot better before I keep explaining it. And
that's fair though. That's completely fair. Yeah, that's
no problem there. And then RAO, the other thing is, supposing that we do live in a simulation of some sort, then the creators of the simulation, either they live in another simulation or they're in the really real world. So then where did they come about? I mean, you just kick the can down the road and we were talking about this before the show. You get that panspermia business where life originated from some other planet. Okay, well then what about that planet? Oh, it came from another planet before that. And you keep on going, and it's sperm all the way down until you end up facing the question, where did life originate originally? And and
logically this could be reality prime. I am leaving that saying that, I could be wrong, this could be reality prime. But logically there must be a reality prime, and the answer to that is I don't know.
Sure.
The answer
how would you know?
There's I don't know.
Yeah. And there's the journey that you're on, and it's fun. It's a fun thought experiment.
Yeah.
But until you have a better grasp of it, until I think there's a scientific consensus, because a few scientists cooking up awesome, sitting around the coffee table kind of thoughts, until we have something we can use to falsify it, then I think we're just bouncing around ideas. World on a Wire, one of my favorite. Someone corrected me. It's a German miniseries from the 70s. It's like The Matrix before The Matrix. World on a Wire. Check it out if you want to. Or don't.
Yeah, I would just want to add, to even give something a little, not that what Johnny didn't give was terrible, but to be even to give as much leeway as possible for the theory here. At least just something that provides some that generates some prediction, and not just a prediction. I can make a prediction the ice cream truck will come in my neighborhood tomorrow and have prior knowledge, but that's not going to separate the theory. So something that's new in the future, right, that generates it. That I'm on board to listen to that, especially just from a philosophical perspective. I care about consensus, but if someone has a theory and they actually have some falsification criterion, and they actually serve to try to test it, verify it, have some prediction in the future, I think that's what separates the pseudoscientific conjecture from some conjecture that actually has some work that it could do. So I would just look at that as well. Don't hang your hat on consensus necessarily, but just something that separates it from an underdetermined theory I could rival it with.
So a falsifiable prediction that fits the facts and evidence that we live in a simulation and would be able to prove, demonstrate one way or the other, without
sounds unfalsifiable, doesn't it?
No, it sounds like I got more thinking to do.
Sure.
Right. Yeah, we all do.
Sure.
But the other thing of it is, does this notion forgetting, of course, the logic and the science evidence, the scientific evidence of it all, does this in some way, by following this train of thought, just thinking about it from your own personal reason, I'm not projecting this onto you, but one of the things I was researching about this was it sort of abdicates personal responsibility in some way. And I'm not saying you're saying this at all, but the idea that we're in a simulation on some level, it kind of sets you up for, well, I'm just playing a role that's been set for me by the programmers. And
I actually have two things to touch on with that. Just playing a role is completely different for me, and now we're getting into my field of expertise, because you're talking about with me as a speedrunner, I learn video games to a point that I'm counting them 60 times per second. So it's when I'm playing a game, I'm not just playing a role. I am doing my damnedest to shred every 100th of a second that I can off of that.
Yeah.
So I have tons of personal responsibility while playing the video game, knowing it's a video game, because I need to get those times down and get them gold splits.
Because you have a goal. You have a goal to meet. What do you speed run? What's your most
the one I'm best at is Contra 3 low percent normal difficulty. I'm about 30 seconds away from the world record on that one, and I just got the sub 60 in Super Metroid.
Very cool. Okay, well, I will keep an eye out for that, because I do watch a speedrunner too.
I play Sega Genesis still in 2022, so there's my console for you. Yeah, but anyway,
I've actually got the Genesis Mini and the Atari Flashback that both have Genesis games on them. So like you and I might be able to co-stream one of these days, get ourselves some race going on.
Well, thank you so much, Rao. I want to see that happen. I want to see that happen at some point. I think we're. I think, you know what? Why don't you dig some more into this? And we will too. I'm giving myself homework this time.
That sounds like an amazing idea. Look for me calling back in about a month or two, because I got some research to do. And thanks to both y'all for like getting me stepped into the right direction so that I can start making more science out of this. Because one thing I'm trying to do is get the God claims out of the simulation hypothesis.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, Rao, thank you. And I appreciate. I really have admiration for your attitude in that perspective. A lot of people go different routes, and so I appreciate that you look at it from that perspective. I really do. So thank you. I really do.
Oh, dude, this show been teaching me a lot for years, so I'm gonna keep learning the best I can.
Awesome.
Have fun with y'all's next callers. I'll be in chat.
Thank you. Have a good one.
You know, that's something that I really do enjoy about doing this show and other shows like it, is that not only do I get to work with cool folks who are a pleasure and a treasure to work with.
I know you ain't talking about me.
Oh, I am too. But the callers too. There's interesting people out there in the world doing stuff, thinking thoughts, and that's cool. I like that. Thanks.
Yeah.
I'm glad Ariel called in. Great first call.
Yeah, and that's the other thing is we had some text, like I think in some YouTube comments and stuff like that, and it was it was amicable. It wasn't anything that was contentious anyway, and I was glad the actual conversation was the same. So
we
appreciate that. Again, so last week, I don't know if you saw, but you could go back and watch or listen to rather the episode of me and Jesus Christ and compare to see which one you think is Jesus Christ by voice alone, I guess, by going to tiny.cc/AEN podcasts and also picking up any other audio format for any other show, such as Atheist Experience, Talk Heathen, the flagship show of the Atheist Experience Network. Is obvious. Yeah, I was setting you up, so please do.
Yeah. I want to say something about the flagship. I just want to let everyone out there in the audience know that you have permission to come aboard the flagship, which will be airing today at 3 p.m. We're about to set sail, so please come aboard and join us on our journey.
Indeed. And I'm getting my ticket here on the 2nd, and I'll be recording an episode as well to be on to promote later as well. So
First class cabin for Jmike.
yeah,
It's been reserved for him. Yeah.
And you can also check out our fan run Facebook at tiny.cc/FGTHG, a really good resource for people that want to. You listen to the show and you kind of have this urge. Maybe I want to go talk to some people. Maybe you don't want to necessarily talk with theists right away, but you want to talk to some atheists. There's a bunch of people. There's theists, atheists, and you can set up a debate, set up just a conversation. Maybe you just have an idea you want to run. You can do that. Maybe you want to talk to one of the hosts or co-hosts there. You'll see them there. So there's a lot of opportunity there on the Fan Run Facebook as well as the Fan Run Discord, which we will be. Johnny, I think you're going, right? I'm going.
I'll be
there.
there.
So we'll both be there at tiny.cc/ACD Discord. Check us out there after the show as well at any time. That is a Fan Run Discord where I've had some, I wouldn't say formal debates, but I've had some debates on there. We've talked about, not just religion. We've had some things about, like IP and things like really anything from the political nature down to like geology to really anything. There are conversations can be had there. So check that out if that interests you. And as Johnny said, nonprofits 3 p.m. Central after the Discord conversation with Johnny and myself.
Do you want to know what we're talking about on the nonprofits after at 3 p.m. Central? Do you want to know?
It's the flagship show, so I think we should know what the flagship show has to offer.
I'll tell you. Since you've asked so nicely. We've got Cynthia. We've got Subjectively Don. We've got Mateo and Secular Rarity this week. And we're going to be talking one of my new segments, Pope Watch. The former Pope failed to act over abuse allegations. Surprise, surprise. And he admitted it. Arkansas inmates are suing after being given ivermectin to treat COVID-19. Politics, I'm sure, wasn't involved. NASA used religious experts to predict how humans may react to aliens. That seems good. I guess start holy wars. And a strange but true segment about a megachurch pastor who sprayed it, not just said it, all over a churchgoer's face by spitting. Very nasty and very weird. But that's what we're talking about this week.
Very strange.
Very strange, but very true also.
Well, so, and maybe you could stop in your tracks because you could decide, well, I'm not caught up. There's things I've missed, right? Yeah. You could go back to the AEN podcast, right? Or better yet, you could take a look at this clip here and see what you've missed and go back and check it out later.
Mm-hmm.
We don't want multiple waves of this transphobia virus. Thank you very much. We don't want new variants of the transphobia virus. Yeah. We don't want to go through Greek letters of transphobia viruses. No, thank you.
You're attributing, obviously, a lot of importance to the order. And I think that where the major disagreement comes from here is the origin of that order. Not to be glib, but are you familiar with evolution?
I'm generation old, so it's not a surprise to me really that different cultures and different generations have different attitudes towards sex.
Are you using your mind to come to conclusions?
Don't have any choice.
That's right. Thank you. That's great. Someone answered a question today. I feel great. I'm done. That's it.
Yay, we're done, Kenneth.
God doesn't need to change his mind. He's seen all of time. To suggest that God changes his mind over time would make God subject to time, but God is timeless. See? I can do this shit all day long.
I have to say, I love Richard. Go out of your way and watch any episode from the ACA with Richard in it. It is a treat.
Do. And if you didn't catch that episode of Truth Wanted, well, then you're truly missing out. Check it out. I really enjoyed that with Vino and MD Aware. That was a out of the park home run episode as far as I'm concerned.
Biblically, I hear it was good, but
biblically.
We're going to move on to not biblically calls. And, well, this is an atheist. Maybe it is. But we're going to go to Thomas in Tennessee. Pronouns are he, him. Wants to know if we have experienced people accusing us of not being true believers after deconversion. It's gonna be a little different, I think, from me and Johnny's perspective, as we don't come from the same background. So, Johnny, why don't you start it off for us? Well, first,
Yes.
actually, you know what? First off, I'm rude. Thomas, how you doing?
Yeah.
I'm doing fine. Thank you, guys. I appreciate
Good,
it.
good.
Great to have you on. Have we experienced
You.
people not believing us after deconversion? Well, I deconverted, I
Well,
guess,
what
when
I
I
should-
was in. Oh, well, you know what? Go ahead. What were you going to say? You had maybe
Well,
some finer
let me
points
try
to put on that?
explain it for you.
Thanks.
What I'm actually saying is people have, said in the past, well, you're an atheist now, well, you must never have been a Christian. And here's my perspective on it. If you would have asked me 10 or 11 years ago, I probably would have said, hell yes, I was a Christian. I was brought up Catholic school, church on Sundays. I was an altar boy. I played in folk mass. I was a guitar player, all those things. But now when I think about it, it's been, 10 or 11 years. And now I think about it, I'm like, well, I was as secular as could be. Like, I played in a punk band, and I did all the things that go with that. I was a drinker. I was a drug doer. I did everything. That was my life, was music.
Mhm.
And now I think about it, it's like I was so secular and didn't even realize I believed in God all the way to about 10 years ago. And then after that, I had a marriage not work on for me, and I was having a difficult time dealing with it. And that's why I'm atheist now. But, and I wanted to see if you guys,
Well,
had,
sorry, can I ask you? Sorry, I might be being too pedantic. You said that's why I'm atheist now. What
Yeah,
was
I heard that
what?
too.
What was the reason? I just want to make sure it's not coming from. Because it sounded like you went through some emotional stuff there, obviously, and so I want to make sure your reasons don't stem from that kind of emotional bias.
it was terrible. I was not dealing with it. And therefore, one thing I did, I guess I better bring this up. I always saved a lot of prayers for the time that I would need it the most. And at that point is when I really prayed. And then, basically I was just talking to air. There was nothing there. And then I realized that anytime I've asked for prayer before, most of the time it just never happened. So,
Okay.
So yeah.
Okay, yeah, okay. So that's sorry, I didn't want to be overly pedantic there. I just wanted to make sure it wasn't for reasons that really actually wouldn't justify not believing, or at least if you got to a position of saying like God does not exist, which I didn't know if I heard you, which is obviously a different claim. But yeah, sorry, I just wanted to make sure. But yeah, Johnny, I want to make sure you get your point that you were going to say there at the beginning.
I've lost my point. But Thomas, my understanding is that you stopped believing when you realized that your prayers in times of hardship were just thoughts to yourself going out into the void. Is that the correct understanding? Is that how you came to realize that you didn't believe in God, or was there something else? We're getting far afield from the original point of your call, but that's it. Okay.
No, that is it. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Well, if we want to bring it back to the description of your call, have I ever been told that I was never a true believer? Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I have. I've also been told that I actually believe, that I just don't accept that I believe, by a good friend of mine, who I've mentioned on the show a bunch of times. Good buddy of mine. And I just throw back at him, well, you don't actually believe. You just want to, belong to a club, or you're afraid of the reality of things. And I don't mean it either. I just throw it back at him as kind of oh yeah, well, I can do that game too, pal. So yeah, that was my experience. Mike has a very different experience because I think he was raised differently, right, Mike?
Yeah, I my family's Catholic, but I wasn't really raised Catholic. I had a lot of freedom in that sense.
Mhm.
So I kind of formed my own beliefs in terms of like I'd put it in the category of spiritual or like new age, but it's not really identical to like today's new age. It's similar. It was really just things I made up or people could tell me and I would just believe because I had really bad standards of evidence and I was willing um to choose certain stories as convincing over having the facts of the world take precedent. And so I've never really experienced because I didn't since those were very personal and it wasn't part of like a group. I didn't have that there was no backlash to be said. But that said, I do get it from the other end of that people will tell me that I do actually believe and they'll cite things like Romans 1:20 or something like that, which yeah, just my same tactic would be similar to Johnny's. It's just that, yeah, you don't actually believe in this God that has contradictory properties that we can show from my perspective isn't real. But
So between the two of us, we get it from both ends, basically.
Oh,
But how about you? Have you experienced that yourself, Thomas? Have you been told that, and what's your reaction when you're told that you were never a real believer, or when you're told that you still believe you're just in a kind of denial phase? What happens when you hear those things?
well, my new wife always says, you were a Christian, right? And I'm like, I lived so secular, I was a rock and roller. That's,
Yeah.
and like I said, all the trappings that go with that. It's a fun life, and that's what I was doing. And when I think back about it, going way back, yeah, I would have said, oh yeah, maybe, no, I was a Catholic, I was Christian as could be,
Mhm.
but I really wasn't. I just believed in a God at that point, like in my 20s and stuff like that. But it wasn't until about 10 years ago that I actually started waking up. Like I'm 62 now, but
Mhm.
when I think about go back to the 80s and stuff like that and the way I was living back then, that's about as secular as can be.
well, so you're waking up now, but right. And so the one thing I'm worried about is why does it? Let's say somebody takes it that you do believe in God, right? That you truly do still.
Mhm.
What does their conjecture matter to you? Like, why does that? I'm not saying it does, but if it does have power over you, why would you let it?
Oh, it has no sway whatsoever.
Okay, that's good.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
had a question, though. Something you keep talking about, Thomas, was when you're looking back at the 80s and what a wild time you've had, a very secular life, which doesn't really mean anything to me, a secular life, because I have non-believing friends who are pretty boring. They just they work, they eat, they read books. I mean, not that reading books is not
Man, you're just gonna all right. Talk about me live on the air.
right. They're just doing their business, and they're not. I mean, when I think of wild, I think of, I don't know, reckless behavior and extreme situations, bungee, base jumping, right, or whatever. But do you have an idea of being a believer comes with certain behaviors? Because I don't think that's the case. I think that there are believers who are wild people, morally questionable people, but they deal with it. I knew a dude back in college who would go to these revival meetings. He was a piece of shit. And then he would go to these revival meetings and get, bathed in the blood of the lamb or whatever the hell he did there. I don't know if they had blood there or whatever.
Start it back all on Monday.
Started all back up on Monday. And he was hardcore about it. And our other friends who had deconverted from there, they kind of made excuses for him. But I came to him later. I'm like, this guy's awful. But he really believed. And so I don't think he didn't believe because he was living a worldly life. I thought that he was using it as a crutch for his guilt or a get out of jail free card. Did you have an idea that you had to be holy or that you weren't a true believer because you were whooping it up? What were your thoughts about the disjointed nature between belief and the party times?
I mean, I guess I probably should have realized it at that point that the two things didn't go together. Like the part of just always trying to be a super guy. I mean, I've always done that. But I mean,
What do you mean by a super
I
guy?
believe in God,
Like
but then at
a
that
decent
point,
person?
I kind of knew. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
You said a super guy. What do you mean by that? Do you mean like a decent person who helps people out and is considerate? Do you mean that?
Yes.
Okay. So could you not also be a super guy who is like, helps you move and volunteers time, who then also believes or doesn't believe in, Zeus or whatever, Jesus, Joseph Smith, and then also gets fucked up on drugs? I mean, could you not do all those things at the same time?
I could.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Good. And you did.
I did for sure.
All right. I just don't see the connection. I've seen in my time here on Earth, I've seen so many shitbag Christians who go to church on Sunday, who are terrible garbage people and treat people like garbage, because they're selfish and hateful. I've also seen fantastic Christian people and other religious people, and I've seen non-believers who fit into those same categories as well. I don't see the connection. I think all it is people who believe or don't believe use different rhetorical frameworks to justify their behaviors and to deal with the consequences of their actions. That's what I see. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. I've seen the best and worst in Christianity for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. Well,
I would. It's hard to add anything to what you say, Johnny. That's like a nail on the head. I think
because I said shitbag. Yeah, shitbag.
Yeah, you enticed me.
Yeah. Well, Thomas, how is your life now that you're no longer a believer? Are you more in touch with the consequences of your actions? Do you still party? What's going on?
Oh yeah, yeah. I mean, I'm a fun-loving guy. Like I like to have a lot of fun.
Good.
And maybe after a year of being single, I got remarried, and my life couldn't be any better. I've got a wonderful wife that treats me well and has the same viewpoints that I have, and this is a match. What I had before was a 20-year marriage that didn't work out because of a lot. I mean, some of the reasons me for sure, but it didn't work out. But after that all passed, that everything is just better every way that you can think.
Sure. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Johnny.
Well, I was going to say, did your ex-wife have a strong faith in a religion of some kind?
Not real strong, but strong enough. Like she still believes in everything, and it for me it doesn't wash. It just doesn't, and she's going to disagree with me, but and then I've got a son that's 24, and he's like me, and he knows it too. He's like, geez, Heathen, me and you have so much in common, and it's like I don't have anything in common with my mom and her new husband,
Well,
so yeah.
let me touch on that, Thomas. You say you don't have anything in. You're not saying this about your own mother. You're saying this about your stepson.
Yeah, he's my son. He's atheist also, but
he's your son. Okay.
His mom, that's my ex-wife, still believes.
Right. Well, this is something that comes up from time to time. on the show and in life, is that just because you don't have the same belief state doesn't mean you don't have something in common with folks. It's easy to, because religious belief is such a big thing for a lot of people that it can become overwhelming in the way you relate to people. And I caution your son and you and others to let that be the prime method by which you determine whether or not you have something in common. For example, my mother and I have a lot in common, but religion is not one of them. We like a lot of the same stuff. And I can talk with coworkers all day long, friends and coworkers, and never find out what their religious faith status is, right? Movies and politics. I shouldn't talk about politics at work, but we could talk about movies. I could talk about current events. I could talk about stuff that I read in the newspaper. I could talk about, you can have similar senses of humor and really bond with somebody. And then maybe you go down that road of, and also I believe in Thor. I'm like, oh, you do? All right. And then you just kind of stop, or you can talk about it. But you don't always have to go down that road. You don't have to define your relationship with someone as, well, we don't believe the same metaphysical claims. You don't have to. You can just acknowledge it on some level in your head.
Yeah, the people that really have that blockade in the road will make that pretty clear to you on their own. And in that case, you're just better off not even associating with those types of people.
I mean, the thing is, when I say that we didn't have anything in common, I mean, really, we had, my ex-wife, we had nothing in common. We made it work for 20 years. Yeah. But, I was always listening to music. She would want to watch TV. I mean, the smallest little things. We just didn't click.
Sure. It happens.
And everything clicks now.
That's fantastic. Great to hear that you found that experience. And I hope that your ex-wife has found some similar experience of her own.
And she's happily married now, to a new guy. And
Very good.
That's great. We're both doing good. So,
Well, let me ask you this.
But yeah.
You had some kind of religious tradition that you were involved with when you still considered yourself a believer. Did you find that when you left the faith that you were left with any kind of a gap in your needs as far as community or the ability to talk about things of a certain nature? Did you find that when you left, you were left out in the cold?
Absolutely not. I guess I'm like any atheist when they found out that what their beliefs were before, they just go down the rabbit hole and find other people that believe like I do, like you guys, or Matt or, Seth or whoever. You just find that out. I had no problem adjusting whatsoever.
That's great. It's not the experience of all people, but that is definitely, we hear a lot about this. Callers call in, they left their faith and they found a God-shaped hole in their heart, or they lost their community or something. They felt like this inner longing, but not everyone's like that. Some people are quite fortunate. I think that was me, and it sounds like that was you. And Mike he's just been empty his whole life.
Well, you had the lack of God-filled hole, right? So
I really appreciate you calling in, Thomas. Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Yeah,
I appreciate it, both of you guys.
Yeah. Thank you, Thomas. Sorry, I couldn't offer much as and not someone who's been a Christian, but I do find this is the part where I do like to kind of take it in, so to speak, because it's not foreign to me in the sense I have had to help a lot of friends out that have come from that background, and that it's very prevalent really anywhere you go, especially in the US. But I get to this point sometimes where I hear such an array of things said in that, and how such a myriad of feelings that come from that. Yeah, it never really. I guess it always puts perspective into me that I feel like there's people that are somewhat fortunate enough to not have things kind of, and I can't speak for you or anyone else, but some people, they have this kind of put in front of them before they can even really think for themselves. And so sometimes I just look back and that's for me, it's like why I always go back to at least the way I grew up. And I'm glad that I had the opportunity, and why I think, it's super important to fight for other people to have this type of freedom, even as early of an age as possible, because that's the seed that gets planted. So.
Right.
I feel very bad for people that have had such a hard time dealing with things like this. And, I kind of wonder, nothing like that for me at all. It's been super. So, but I'll let you guys get on to another caller. I just want to say that both you guys are just fantastic, and I'll keep watching.
Thank you, Thomas. We appreciate it.
Thank you. You have a good day.
You too.
Bye. Yep. Bye.
Yeah, that's always one that's like harder for me in the sense, because it's like, I can only speak from a different perspective in that. And mine's so different in the fact that, like, I didn't leave a group of people. There was like some friends, that I had where we just kind of bounced off each other's conjecture. I was like, oh yeah, that sounds about right, And so there was no sense. That's always lost it from my deconstruction of beliefs, or my epistemology, was that I didn't have the hurdle of community as much. I didn't leave that type of thing. So when I hear that, it always puts it into perspective to me that's a much heavier bag of rocks to carry.
It is for some, but we've been covering this on the Nonprofits, that because of the quarantine, because of the coronavirus, because of COVID-19, SARS-CoV-2, and other names that have been given to this phenomenon that we've been living through, that a lot of people have left religion, have left the active practice, the communal practice of their religion, and many are not coming back. And I think, and I'm not going to make a prediction as to whether people are going to snap back to their congregations, but when you leave that community, you might find other communities and realize that you were just involved with that community because it was your community. There's an inertia there, and that people were forced for some time to find other accommodations. And I wonder what the future of religious practice in this country is, because some were forced to stop congregating. And then once they were allowed to come back, maybe it was more hassle than it's worth, independent of belief state, right?
Sure.
My friends aren't going back to church who are believers. They're just not going back, not anytime soon. It's so much easier to sleep in on Sunday. So
yeah, that is very true. We're going to move on. Before we get to another caller, we're going to go on to top 5 patrons. There's one on there, Johnny, that I would like you to do. But if you're not familiar with our Patreon, you can go and support us at patreon.com. tiny.cc/PatreonTH. And you could be one of the top 5 patrons. And
you could go through the full URL if you want to. You could type in HTTP, I assume S.
HTTPS S, and then colon. Yeah, and we
don't have to though.
Yeah, if you want to be super pedantic, our top 5 are going to be Eric Tweet, Dingleberry Jackson, Balaam's Donkey, Paul Leah, the Great North American Dingaloo, and Johnny, why don't you do our honorary mention for us?
Autumn Burkhart.
I was glad you pronounced that better than I think I would have. So,
what were you going to say?
I think Burkhart. Burkhart. Yeah, I don't know.
Thank you, Autumn.
English is I'm still learning it, so we'll get there at some point.
It's a practice.
It's tough. We're gonna go on to Sal in Ohio. Pronouns are they, them. Wants to talk about willingness to question self and personal story and being wrong. Sal, you're on with Johnny and Jmike. How's it going?
Mm-hmm.
Oops. think we got it.
Hello. Hey, how's it
Hello.
going?
It's going good. How are you doing?
Pretty good, thanks. Well, I just, I think, just because of the relevance, and actually was just listening to what Johnny was saying about coronavirus and how that's going to affect people's faith and skepticism and being willing to question whether you might be wrong or that your own perceptions may be wrong. I think that's kind of like ties in pretty well to what I was wanting to talk about, because and this was kind of triggered by like a recent experience I had with talking with my parents, because both of my parents are anti-vax, conservative, and
Lucky you.
Yeah. And so and I've been accused by them of being that I have too much pride and not wanting to question myself. But I got really fired up by that. I was like, really? Like, you don't really know me, because I consider myself one of the most self-doubting persons. And I view that as a strength, actually. And I think that's something that is maybe a differentiating factor between what makes an atheist and what makes a theist, perhaps. I mean, not always, but I think that's a critical factor. And I was just going to tell a little bit about like my background, if that's okay.
Go ahead.
'Cause yeah, so, I mean, I was raised in a Christian family. Obviously, I told you my parents are conservative Christians. And by the time I was 13 or so, I was definitely like, I don't believe in the whole Christianity thing. It doesn't make sense to me. And I think I came to like a deist position at that point. And I still consider myself agnostic in terms of I don't know, because who knows what is out there beyond the universe, right? But so I consider myself atheist now. But I had an experience in my young adult life. I was around 22 or so, 23, where I would call it a religious experience, because I had it was not drug related. It was trauma related. I was in a really difficult position, and I had an experience where I felt like Jesus came to me, and it was all like the truth, the light, the love, and it felt real to me, And I remember I texted all my family, like, I have Jesus now, but that only lasted about 6 months to a year, where it kind of slowly faded away, where I was like, I can't make sense of this anymore. Like, if I want to be this generic about what Jesus means to me, it doesn't, make sense to have it be contained within just the Christian, scaffolding. And so now I'm atheist again, right? It didn't last very long, but I just wanted to make the point that the willingness to doubt your own perceptions and stuff is very important. I think hopefully, coronavirus might teach people that they can't necessarily trust what their own personal experience is around them, because they're just one data point, right? And
right.
But yeah, I just kind of wanted to throw that out there. I don't want to take too long, but I just thought it was relevant.
Yeah. Well, so what would be what's your kind of like your main issue that you'd want to talk about with that said, though?
I think that it's just that it's a real paradigm shift that I think a lot of people are struggling with right now, and it's very apparent with people who just aren't willing to question whether they might be wrong. I mean, even I question, you know, like with my dad, he'll send me a whole bunch of stuff about ivermectin and, you know, conspiracy theories, if you want to call it that. And I do my, you know, I listen and I'm like, well, you know, it's maybe true that there might be some evidence suggesting that there's some efficacy, but it's still not enough evidence for me, you know, to, you know, and I'm like, I totally agree that, you know, sure, we should have some funding for people to do further investigations and further research on, because it's like we need all the tools in the toolbox. But just because that may be true doesn't rule out that this other tool, the vaccine, doesn't work, because you have to, you know, it's like to say that you're anti-vax, you got to understand that.
I mean, the data, I mean, it's pretty conclusive. I mean, you just show your dad the data, like the data which he's purporting to you to say we should do more studies and things like that, just in conjunction with what is happening, right? The demonstrable data, like that, his claims won't stand on any legs. That's just
that's not how it works, right?
It's not like I'm not saying you're going to convince them, but I mean, I wouldn't even give them. My point is, I wouldn't give them any bone. I guess maybe I'm interpreting it wrong, but it sounds like you're almost enabling in a way to be like, yeah, well, maybe. The way that I handle these things, if I talk to people and they throw that hint of conspiracy in there, is I just challenge them. I go, how do you know? How exactly did you determine that, right? And challenge them on it, because 9 out of 10 times they don't know what the fuck they're talking about. It's just something they're parroting that they heard down the line that someone else parroted.
Yes, your father, unless your father is a medical researcher, your father got that information doing toilet research, or heard it through his squad of similar-minded people who have bought in
and I'm
to
not
something
either. So I mean,
sure,
I'm
just saying with your dad, it's harder, obviously, to just be like, you know, to shun, obviously, but with people who, I guess maybe this is why I don't have, like, I have a select few of friends in my real life, is because when people bring these things up at work or things like that, I am the first person to like really challenge them on it, given that they're willing to talk about it. I'm not going to force someone in a conversation they don't want to be in. And that seems to always be successful in the idea that they're not going to bring that up, or they're going to think twice before they bring up an idea that they just pull it out of their ass, because there's actually someone in the room that's going to challenge them and see whether or not it's a substantive case. And 9 out of 10 times, at least what it seems like to me, you'll get them thinking in their own head. The second they go, well, I don't know if I want to say this to Mike because he's going to bring up this whole science thing, right? And like, I don't want to deal with that whole thing. Then they're going to like, that's going to be planted in their head. And hopefully they recognize, well, okay, well, why does Mike look to the science thing as like this, always this kind of, objection to what I say? Oh, because it actually demonstrates things as opposed to not demonstrating things, right? And so for me, I feel like, if you enable somebody very quickly, if you like, it's one thing to say, look, I don't know, and let me look into it. But if you do know and you smell bullshit, even if you haven't researched it, just ask them. How did you determine that? How do you know that?
Yeah, and that's the Jmike way of doing it, Sal.
Yeah,
there's lots of ways to skin that cat,
for sure.
Metaphorically.
Let me an example of kind of my way of dealing with it is that like he sent me a video that was of I'm blanking on the name. He's some doctor on YouTube that has like at least 1 million subscribers or whatever. And talking about how ivermectin caused like Japan's coronavirus cases to like, plummet or whatever. That was the idea. So I watched the video and I was like, well, I poked the holes in it, like the specific holes. Like you said, okay, well, he's just talking about this was a point where in Japan, it was something like August 2021 that they approved use of ivermectin. and then the cases continue to rise for a little bit, but then it drops off dramatically after that. And I was like, well, that doesn't, that just because that's the point in time where they approved ivermectin, that doesn't mean that all of a sudden everyone started taking ivermectin, right?
Correlation and causation.
And so, I and then like,
good one. And what did your father say to that?
Well, he actually said that was a good point. He's a smart guy. He likes to base his, he likes to be at least seemingly logical.
Well, let me ask real fast. Is that doctor on YouTube an actual doctor? Because it's going to be harder for me to believe, and I don't mean this in any offense, but it's going to be hard for me to believe your dad takes value in the source if it's a YouTube doctor and just a YouTube doctor. That would make me very skeptical that he cares about the source.
But there's no shortage of licensed medical professionals who.
No, I just wanted to make sure that like it's not just a YouTube doctor, because then we're on a whole other world of bad standards of evidence, and we need to that's not going to be you won't be dealing with like the actual content as opposed to like the methods on a meta level that the person employs when they come to know something, right? That's going to be like, at least from my perspective, the thing you'd want to tackle, because you could list anything that somebody disagrees with, but if they just employ really shitty methodology or have really bad standards of evidence, it doesn't matter what topic you talk about. You're just going to have to correct how they come to knowledge in the first place. What's substantiated to them as versus say a methodology like science that has actual backbone of making that a case.
Sal, you're in a bit of a jam, because you're coming from two completely different. You and your father and other members of your family are coming from different starting points when it comes to what information each will accept as reliable. And it sounds like you are doing what the Lord's work, because you took his source and you started poking holes in it. You're going to keep on getting that. As long as you're willing to engage, you're going to have to keep on doing that. But ultimately, you're going to have to address the main issue, which is that your father has access to all of the information that humanity has ever recorded and is available on the internet and other sources, but chooses to toss out certain information because of a reason. And you could find out what that reason is.
A lot of the times, for everyone, those reasons can be very subconscious and very based on more emotional or beliefs that you already have. So that's why it's so crucial to always ask if you might be wrong, because it's
you're right.
I was willing to consider that this may be some valid evidence, for ivermectin, but I wanted to get to my other points about other confounds that in this data that this study or whatever, that that Japan, he even said also in this video that you showed me, the doctor was pointing out that Japan is also they're highly vaccinated. Okay. And then they also are very obedient when it comes to the masking policies. So they're highly masked and highly vaccinated at the same time. So I'm like, so I pointed out those are confounds, Dad. Those. How can you know that it's the ivermectin when they were already following the vaccine and the masking at the same time, and the Omicron comes along and changes the spread of it, because this was actually data of hospitalizations and deaths. So it wasn't showing numbers of cases. It was hospitalization and death. So I was pointing out that Omicron has been shown to be less percentage of hospitalization and death, and they're already following these guidelines. So I'm just saying that I think it can be useful to be willing to look at evidence that might prove your own theory that what you already believe, and be willing to be wrong, but then you can demonstrate to someone else what you're seeing in their own source, basically.
Well, Sal, what did he say about the masks and the vaccines? Just to cut straight to it, what was his response to that in Japan?
He said that those were good points, but he ultimately, and this is what he always goes back to, I think, when he feels like he doesn't have anything else to say, is that he says it all goes back to he's just mostly concerned with government control and taking away individual rights. And
right. So that makes a lot of sense, because like in the sense of like, it's really easy to exploit people's desires or the fact that they think they have control, right? And when you press up against that, I think a lot of it for me, maybe it's not as cut and dry, but a lot of it seems like to me is that people want to feel connected to the world around them in any way possible, and they're willing to just hold on. I think Johnny nailed it pretty, perfectly. Whatever that reason is, they're willing to set, whether maybe it's in some subconscious cases as well, but they want to hold on to that reason, and it only serves to be easily exploitable in that whenever they see some theory that aligns with those desires, I mean, it's just so much easier to take that over the actual facts, right? It says for a lot of times for people, that's just too much work, or maybe not. It's just not in line with their desires that they want to believe.
I think to get through to your father, you're going to have to step above the specifics. You're going to have to keep on dealing with the specifics, but you're going to have to start attacking the higher level premises upon which he filters his information. And what would constitute a reliable authority? What would constitute? What were the factors he looks into when he determines whether a source is a reliable source? You might also ask him to allocate percentage points to the plummet, the drop in COVID cases in Japan, or whatever the example is. How much of it is attributable to masks? How much of it is attributable to hydroxychloroquine or whatever? And then ask him, how did you determine it? Did you just throw a number? Did you just pull it out of your butt? Or what was the methodology by which you allocated those points? If he's an intelligent person, he sounds he is. There's plenty of intelligent people who are pulling numbers and ideas out of their asses. Ask him to do that. Once he realizes that he's just finding information that already feeds into his existing beliefs, or things that feed into that, because the thing is, he's getting information about ivermectin from sources who claim to be all about personal freedom and liberty and all these wonderful words that I like too. Personal freedom and liberty and government out of my business, right? They can attach those words to any claim. Like, if you really care about freedom and liberty and children not getting harmed and free speech, and you care about these things, well, then drink your piss. Everyone, drink your piss. If you care about these things, about God and books and literacy, and you can just put those words together, right? And that's what some people are doing. And what the other side is not doing a very good job of is throwing liberty and children and peace and love and, nice flowers, whatever catchphrases they have to do with the vaccine. They're not doing a particularly good job of it. They're relying upon reason and sensibility and sensitivity and social togetherness, but they're not throwing in words like freedom and stuff like that. I find that to be a failing in the messaging being done by the CDC and the powers that be. They need to play that game too, because some people are, at this point in their lives, mostly swayed by catchphrases.
Yep.
And I'm not saying they have to be untrue, but there is an association being made. And I think your father might be falling prey to it as well. I don't know. What do I know?
Yeah, rhetoric does a lot.
Yeah. But Go to that higher level.
I don't
Keep
know.
on doing what you
Yeah.
keep on doing what you're doing and get to that higher level and go deeper, because it sounds like you have a pretty good relationship. You're able to weather the storm of having these kind of disagreements with your father,
Yeah.
and being aware
Yeah.
that your
More
father
power
still
to
wants
you.
to have these conversations, and insofar as you can handle it. I know people whose mothers and fathers have gone down this road and they can't do it anymore. They just can't. So they're having to write them off as, well, que sera, sera. If they get sick and die, they will. I don't want it to
Well, my
happen, but
dad
it will
did.
happen.
I was very concerned. He got coronavirus early December, and I think it most likely was Delta. And he got pneumonia. His oxygen levels dropped, and he lives alone. And I was very worried about him. I mean, I had a heart-to-heart with him where I was telling him all my best childhood memories and like I love you and everything. When I was super worried about him. So it's been really emotionally difficult for me, you know. But yeah,
you're not alone.
I guess I don't
You're
want
not alone.
much time.
No worries, no
I
worries.
appreciate it.
We appreciate your call, Sal, and let us
Yeah.
know if anything changes, and maybe your dad gets over the fence, and I'd love to hear about that, and know it's, you know, one less person that's going to buy into the anti-vax rhetoric, because these numbers really matter in the long run.
Sal, if you have a breakthrough, please call in. Tell us what worked, because there are millions of people having to deal with that right now. So share your successes.
Yeah.
All right, well, take care.
All right. Yeah, you too. Thanks.
Jmike, let me say this. There's
Sure.
somebody in here in the chat. I don't want to call you out, but they're saying bumper sticker politics. No, I'm not saying that we should be engaging in bumper sticker politics. I'm saying that what we need to do is recognize that there is a power to rhetoric, and we need to play that game, and we need to sync our rhetoric to the demonstrable evidence, the proof of what actually works. Okay, you can't just sit and pull up your glasses. Well, actually, this is what. No, you have to engage in the whole song and dance to get people to understand. It's great if you're right, but if nobody knows and no one can hear, because some people are primed for certain kinds of messaging types. You need to play those games too, because the other side's playing it, and it's kind of like salty food. Like, we're predisposed toward wanting salty food.
Yeah,
right?
I think science and philosophy are great examples, because in science we'll use something with some analogy or something to try to convey the message that might lose what actually is going on in the phenomena. But the rhetoric will help actually have somebody have a better chance of understanding it, as opposed to a lot of the jargon. I think philosophy is the same way. You could have somebody just immediately go, all right, you said everything logical there, but now I just really hate philosophy, all right? As opposed to packaging it in a way where it's like, oh, it makes sense. It's like, look, I just made different mouth sounds, but I still presented the exact same point that we can verify independently. And so, yeah, rhetoric's bad when used to disguise, if you're trying to have information that's not demonstrable and disguise it under rhetoric, sure. But if you can...
You're trying to mislead.
If you can have that path just lead back to the actual independent attestation, there's nothing wrong with packaging something in a way for somebody to understand. But that looks to be about it for us, for all the calls. We got through all the calls today. Johnny, thank you for being my partner in crime, my super guy, so to speak.
I'm your super guy.
My super guy.
Nice.
Just a reminder, if you just joined us and you want to help support the channel, right below the video, you can become a member. You get access to perks such as little different graphics you can use by your name, such as I believe there's like a talk heathen symbol you can use, and you can rep us all day long in the chat, as well as below the chat you can donate, which 100% goes directly to us. YouTube doesn't take out any fees. You can also check out our fan run Facebook at tiny.cc/FGTHG, as well as our fan run Discord at tiny.cc/ACD Discord. And I mean, that's, other than those announcements, we just need to give a big thank you to the crew that puts this on together. every time. There's not a show that doesn't have the crew, so there they are. It would be literally, it would be a logical impossibility to do the show without them. So it'd be a contradiction, especially me and Johnny.
We could do it. I'm sure we could figure it out.
I don't know. I think it's a logical contradiction.
Beautiful people at home, you wouldn't like it if Jmike and I were the crew.
Especially when they take all the Snapchat filters off our face. They make us look, the way we actually look and stuff.
That's right.
So,
we're not animals.
But yeah. Thank you to everybody that watches. If you're an essential worker, if you're not, anybody that's out there having to be in the front lines with what's still unfortunately going on. If we could promote critical thinking, we might be able to combat this much quicker and actually have people vaccinated. So I want to thank all the viewers that are risking their own safety and having to do that in favor of their job. We send you the love rings, and they as they set that on there, we send the love rings from us to you. We really appreciate that. And remember, if you don't believe this is your community, if you do believe, we don't hate you.
We're just not convinced.
See you later.
We want the truth. So watch Truth Wanted live, Fridays at 7 p.m. Central. Visit tiny.cc/YTTW and call into the show at 512-991-9242 or connect to the show online at tiny.cc/calltw.